In this video tutorial, we are going to quickly review how to add an assignment into PowerSchool. So from PowerSchool, I've logged in and I am going to find Power Teacher Pro in the left-hand corner. And now on the very top, you can see the drop-down of all your classes. I prefer to sort these by custom name instead of periods so that I get rid of those little P1D, day 1 or 2, 3. To do that, you can just go to Display Settings and say select section number by course and custom name instead. That makes this part a little bit cleaner. The other thing for your settings just as you begin is by your name here, you could select small, medium, or large size. So just so you know that that is there for whatever you're more comfortable with. So let's go ahead and add our first assignment. I've navigated first to the class that I am going to be adding an assignment to. I've already added 5 assignments here. If this is your first, that is great. You can go up to this plus button and click Add Assignment. It's important to know that all assignments that you add will be entered on the day that you are uploading this into PowerSchool, so you can change the date. I do mention the date because our PowerSchool gradebook program will calculate based on using the most recent data as the more relevant data. All right, let's go through this. Here I can see that I have one class added, and that's the default class that I'm in. If I need to choose a different class, I could drop down here. Many people like to save time, and I think that's very smart by selecting multiple classes. However, it's important to know that maybe I teach biology and math and world history. I'm sure nobody has that load, but it's important to know that when you select different courses, that you will not see standards there because they're not the same standards. The only common standards we have among courses are our learning behaviors. So if you were going to do a learning behavior grade, you could do those for all your courses. If you teach a math, let's say Math 1.9 and Math 2.10 have the same standards, you still cannot add one assignment and add them to both courses because they're different courses. One's for 9th grade and one is for 10th grade. So even though the report card wording or standard wording might be the same, they're different because really behind those are different benchmarks. All right, so I've selected my class. I'm just going to do one class, and I'm going to enter this final summative for, let's say it's a Unit 3. Then you select your category, formative, summative, or diagnostic. To explain that quickly, formative, you might often think of that as, formative, that you're going to be coming back to look at that. And sometimes people choose not to count it towards the grade. By default, it does count towards the final grade, but of course, we can turn that off. Summative means that it is one of the final exams for certain skills and that it will for sure count towards the grade. And then diagnostic is something that is meant for just you as a teacher to look at something, that it wouldn't be public for students or for parents. Any formative and summative assignments are transparent and on PowerSchool, so they can be seen by of course you, but by students and by parents. I'm going to choose this as a summative one. And then I could change the date if I needed to, but I don't need to because this is the same day. You do not need to change from collected only, and please do not change that because we don't do points. We only do standards, which is collected only, even though that's a very strange name for this. The next tab is students. You could show all the students you have and deselect any that you might need to unselect for this assignment. For this, I don't need to do that. The next tab up on top is standards. This is the really important part where you decide which standards you'll be grading for this assignment. So for my final summative unit, I'm going to grade learning behaviors and I'm going to grade the reporting categories. This is a good example because here I can see that I have 2 main categories: responsibility and work habits and participation and collaboration. This one is called the parent or top standard, and we cannot select anything. It kind of messes up our gradebook when we do. These are all the subcategories. So I could decide to grade the subcategories separately and give individual feedback, or if I just want to give one general, I would select the general. For this case, I'm going to do the general. By default, it is counting towards the grade. That happens for formative and it happens for summative. It defaults to count in the gradebook. So if you don't want something to count in the gradebook, you will have to unselect that. I'm going to find my next learning behavior, which is participation and collaboration, remembering that I cannot select here. If I want to do the general one, I will say general participation. Or for this one, I want to give individual feedback just basically on how they are listening actively. I was really noticing that maybe during this, unit or exam. So either one, you just cannot select the top category. Now I've noticed that the numbers kind of change, and these are my academic reporting categories, and I can decide which I want to select for that. Some people's gradebook only has the top category for this, like the parent main level. And so I'm going to say that I'm going to select this one for this assignment and that. So maybe I'm doing evolution, let's say, and genetics. Then I also have investigation, analysis, and communication. This is a reporting category, but this reporting category actually has subcategories. So I can see that this signal here is showing that underneath there are some subcategories, which tells me that I cannot select this main reporting category like I did for these. I have to select the sub. So I'm going to select analysis for the subcategory. Again, automatically it is selecting to count towards the final grade. You may unselect that if you are working with a formative that you don't want to be calculated towards the final grade. Let's go to the last tab now, which is publish. Publish is talking about when do you want this to be public for parents. By default, it's immediately, but you could set up the assignment and then say on a specific date, you're going to publish this to PowerSchool. That would be up to you. So maybe if I wanted to do that, I would say actually at the end of this quarter, which is in November, I want it to come out the day before. I'm just going to say immediately for this one. Then I can save and close this. Before I save and close, the page that takes the most time to kind of get used to is selecting the standards. So making sure that you never select the top level if there are subcategories, which is why this gradebook is probably the most complicated because it has some reporting categories that have no subcategories and then one reporting category that does have subcategories. So the rule is never select the main category if there are subcategories. If there are no subcategories, of course you can select it. So I'm going to save and close this, and then I'm going to score that assignment. So automatically it gives me this green score assignment, and it takes me in here. And here is where I kind of like to change the view to be, let's say, medium or large, because then I have also their picture in PowerSchool to help me remember who that student is if you're a new teacher or if you have a lot of students. What's difficult is I've added many standards to this assignment, but I cannot see them. It just says 1.1.1. So if I hover over there, you can see that it's telling me this is general responsibility and work habits. Also, if I click in that box, it will also tell me this is general responsibility and work habits. So for my class for responsibility and work habits, I'm going to say that most people were a D, and so I'm going to use the fill all function. The next one I selected was listens actively, and I'm going to say that John was a P, then a D, and then I had problems with listening actively here with Paul Doe, and so I'm going to put an L. Now I'm into my reporting categories. So those now the grading scale has changed from the learning behaviors, LDPE, to now the academic reporting category grade scale, which is a 1 through 7. So I can go through and I can use my keyboard to toggle through and say how my students did, or I can use the side pad, and you can also fill across. So if they were a 7 across, you can also do 7 or 6 across. Sorry, my little picture's in the way here. 6 across. All right, so you can decide how do you want to navigate. You could use the keyboard, you could use the pad over here. You could also navigate between students this way or between standards this way. So whatever you're most comfortable with. There's one column that we don't often use, at least for entering the grades, which is the score column. Here, there is no option to enter grades because we don't give like a 15 out of 20. What we give is we give grades on the standards. What you might want to use to do this is maybe you'll say like, oh, I have the students and I have the students, but this student is missing this. That's another way that you can help keep track of like a check sheet of who's turned in things and who are missing assignments. Or maybe this one, obviously it's turned in because I've graded it, but it was late. So instead of missing, it was late. So that's another way to communicate with the students the status of their work. There is a box here that you could add a comment. That comment is not for the report card. That comment is for an individual assignment. So maybe I wanted to let Mary know this assignment was late. So I don't know. Your grade is lower. I don't know exactly, but that is not center-based practice. So you could explain something like, hey, you got an, maybe this would be more appropriate, this L. Hey, I gave you an L in this learning behavior because you were not listening during the lectures, something that way. So that goes over how to add an assignment. So your assignments live on A+ grading in the assignment list tab. I need to always save my changes, so great. And then you can see all your assignments here. Here you can see how many were scored, and that's because I filled in that score column. Here it says none are scored, and that's just because I didn't fill in that score column, which was that last one. So maybe I want to say, like, I've collected all of these. So now they would be done if you wanted to use that. And the other thing to remember is that after you make assignments, that you can always edit them with these little pencils. So something people often do is maybe for this formative, that was like one of the first assignments I made, I would edit that. And because it's formative, if I go to the standards, by default, it's counting in the grade. And actually, that's so old and long ago, I don't want it to count in the grade. So I'm just going to change that to not count in the grade now. And so when I look at that one, you can see here they're purple and italic versus going to another assignment, which are black and not italicized. So that's indicating whether the computer is calculating those scores to count towards the final grade. Remember, and we will go over this more, but remember when we do have an end of a term, so quarter one or semester one, grades are automatically calculated for us and they give us a suggested grade. And that suggested grade, whether it's a learning behavior or academic reporting category, is created only by those assignments that count towards the grade. So only these DDDDDs are counting towards the grade. This P is not, because I can see it's italicized and it's a formative that doesn't count towards the grade. This is a formative that is black, not italicized, and that's counting towards the grade. Okay, so that is also good to know, that you can always check what's counting towards the grade and what's not. And then when you put your assignments in, we do look at the most recent scores. So the ones that were assessed last has the highest weight. And then, so that's 45, 35, and then 20. So we look at the 3 most recent scores. So the due date does influence that. That is all for now. Hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, please reach out to ask.